can bank on it. You can put 100 grand on it. Anything I said, I'll stamp on it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and if this is your first time here, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. So I'm back with another tutorial. So this tutorial was for a repast for my mom's aunt. So this was a freebie. I'm kidding. My mom does a lot for me, and she always helps me blow up my balloons, and she never charges me a dime. So this was for the free ski. But anyways, let's get into it. So I started out with the backdrop. So this is our circle backdrop. Honestly, this is the most annoying product that we have in our inventory, but it is something that's really popular, and there was other ways that I could have gotten this made. Of course, this was made by George, dreamprops_MIA if you're in South Florida. But it's one of those things where like there's no other way to make it but this. Like there's no other practical way. So if there is a way for him to make it with like hinges, but the problem with the hinges is that it's too heavy for me to do by myself. So that's why he did it like this, because obviously sometimes I'm alone. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm just taking the legs and attaching them on. You have to lay it down like this in order to get it straight, and then you pick it up. So of course when it's down, you want to align it as well as you can, like the Velcro strips, but honestly it doesn't always work out that way. So it got cut off because of the positioning of the camera, which I do end up fixing. But you have to like bang in the lines just so it can align. I got lucky that this particular time it was just really easy to align it, but usually I have to lay it down and pick it back up a few times. So when you do that, it's okay if like the corners are a little off, because obviously the balloons are going to fill it in, but this is how it looks overall. So what I'm doing here is I blew up the balloons at the actual venue just because we had so much time that it just made more sense. And to be honest with you, sometimes I don't mind doing that as long as I have a big enough time gap. It's okay. So we did get in at 10, and the event didn't start till 3, so I was fine with blowing them up here, but usually that's not something that I do. So here I'm just putting them together. I'm doing the figure 8 method with connected 260s. So I tie my 260s together and I create like a long string, and then I obviously tie them into each other into a figure 8 motion. So I do not have a video on my channel where I'm going into depth about the basics of a balloon garland, but if that's something that you guys want, please leave a comment below and let me know if that's something that you're interested in. So I know usually people like to, well, some people, they'll put it together with the neck, by the neck, and just make like a long garland. But to be honest with you, I like the movement that 260s give me, and I just feel like it's a really easy way. And honestly, this is a hobby for me, but this is honestly a part of my profession. I do balloons almost every single weekend. I can't afford to put my hands at risk like that, to constantly strain them. Even with putting them in 8, sometimes I just end up twisting them into each other, because the long-term effects on your hands go so unnoticed in this industry. And I just feel like in any industry where you're using your hand, just preserve it as much as you can. So that's why I always tell people to use the 260s. I know some people like fishing line, but I do not use fishing line because it does cut the balloons, like the neck of the balloons, and you'll see them air down. And I prep my balloons pretty far in advance for the most part when I'm doing paid work. So I can't just leave those balloons with the fishing line because the necks usually tend to pop. So what I'm doing here is I was trying to decide, do I want to use the sticky command hooks or do I want to use the binder clips? So to be honest with you, I always will vouch that I love the command hooks, but I cannot continue to put these damn sticky hooks on my backdrops because I have to sit there with the heat gun, pry them off, and then sand down the glue. It's a lot of work. So I ended up using the binder clips, and don't get me wrong, the binder clips work very well. It just To me, I feel like you can get a better positioning with the clear hooks, and the painter's tape that I have in my toolbox right now is not the correct painter's tape. There's a specific painter's tape that sticks better than the one I have. I have to verify which one it is, and then I'll make sure and put it in my Amazon storefront. But yeah, so the one I have right now, I just peels off. So that's why I didn't end up using that. But what I do with the binder clips is I open the binder clip and I fold the hinges back, like the silver part, and then I tie the 260 onto it just into a knot, and then I make either a loop or I just leave it straight and then I just tie it into each other. It's up to you, whatever you prefer. I think that tying it into each other does help, because what happens is it creates a tighter, just a tighter install, like a tighter secure point, versus using the loop where the loop just lets it sit in it. So I do use the loop method with the 260 sometimes, but for the most part, when it comes to tying anything into each other, I try to always do the straight 260s. So what I did here was I just connected the garland. When it comes to the circle backdrop, I tend to not like to make the garland super long because it just is harder for me to maneuver it around. And I know this looks insane right now, but the reason why I'm leaving that gap is because I like to fill out the bottom. So what I do is I like to have one smaller piece on top, and then I make another piece and I curve the bottom to it, and then I just add on to the back part, because I do not like wasting balloons, and I feel like sometimes when you make it too long, you can't get it to twist and turn the way you actually want it to. So what ends up happening is it turns the wrong way, if that makes any sense. But it'll turn like a wrong way, so you have to build it up and use additional balloons, and then there's balloons sitting behind those balloons, but you'll see what I'm talking about. So here you'll see, like, I keep fighting with like a little gap between that spring lilac and the pastel lilac. All I'm going to end up doing is adding in a set of 4. Because when it comes to the gaps, sometimes you're like pulling it down, and to be honest, it doesn't make any sense. You're better off just sticking in a set of 4 or a set of 6, set of 8, depending on how big the gap is. And what I did was I put a binder clip there, so all I have to do is just, attach it on. But now you'll see I'm building out the bottom, and I like a heavy bottom for the most part. My top part, I like to leave pretty regular and just keep it at the sets of 8. Sometimes I'll put in like sets of 4, but when it comes to the bottom, I lately have just been filling it out with full sets of 8 or 10. And that's just because I feel like the volume on the bottom just ends up looking better, to be honest with you. And it just gives it a more dramatic look, and it really doesn't take that much balloons. It's just all about your positioning. So I want to say for this specific install, which I am going to start tracking how much I blow up for each particular install, and I'm going to start putting it in the description box. But I want to say for this one, I blew up about 20 sets of 8. If I'm wrong, you'll see the correct number in the description box. And the amount of balloons I blew up was absolutely perfect. It's just that I only needed to blow up like a couple sets of 4. I used to fill it in completely. I used to blow up all my jumbo balloons, all my 4 sets of 4, and I stopped doing that. So if you see, I just put in a set of 4, and not a set of 4, I just put in a jumbo balloon, and I put it all the way to the back. Y'all know how I feel about those jumbos being up front when it's like a install that's like on an item. When it's a free install, like an arch or just a really big oversized garland, I don't mind. But when it's on an actual structure, I just feel like those jumbo balloons need to be in the back. So that man that came in, he works for the facility. He's so cool. But I did not know him before this. He was just in there talking to me. So now I'm just filling out the sets of 4 into the garland. I did blow these up as I needed them, and I was using the spring lilac from Qualatex in 9-inch. And to be honest with you, I stopped buying 9-inch balloons. I think they are a little bit of a waste of money. When I used to do mosaics, they did come in handy, but now that I don't do them as often, just because people don't really order them the way they used to, I stopped buying them. So what I do instead is I just take the 11-inch and I underinflate it, just enough so that it's smaller than the normal size 11 inch, but not too small that the color is obstructed or just off. Because if you don't blow up your balloons the correct size, sometimes the color could change. So I just make sure I at least have the right color, and I just keep it at the smaller size. So now I am putting together for the other side. So whenever people order this, sometimes they tend to just order one side and it just doesn't look good to me. I always, for the most part, just price it out as if I'm going to put balloons on both sides, whether they ask for it or not, because that compromises the look of the overall install and it just doesn't look good. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the binder clip and I'm actually positioning it right in between the crack. And the reason why I do that is because it's like another security point for the backdrops, because they are two separate pieces. So obviously they're not going to blow down or anything like that, but I still, you know, for the most part wanted it to be pretty sturdy together. So now I, at this point, should have done sticking it to the floor, whatever, like, so I have like a security point on the floor. I did not end up doing that. I ended up attaching it to the backdrop first, and how I attached it to the backdrop was by using a clear command hook, but I put it in the back and let it pull through the front. But what I should have done is done the H method on the floor before I even actually put the garland over there, because you'll see a little bit later in the video, like in 2 seconds, you'll see that I tried to put it after and it just didn't work out, and then the duct tape ended up getting stuck to the balloon, so I just had to leave it there. But it wasn't a big deal, but you know, mistakes happen. Obviously, if that was a client that, you know, like I'm like, this is like a real job for me, I would have done the most to try to fix it. But like I said, this was just for family, so it wasn't that serious for me to give myself a headache over. Because if you pull off the duct tape, then it ends up popping the balloons, and then you create a hole, and then you need more balloons, all kind of stuff. So what I'm doing here is, again, like I did the other side, I'm just filling it in with the 9-inch clusters, which is a set of 4. And I'm doing that because I want the balloons to look like they're full at the bottom. So that's the vinyl for the backdrop. I just put that there because I have the worst luck with these damn vinyl pieces. I either forget or rip them or some kind of commotion. So I just made sure I put it there just so that I do not forget about attaching it to the fixture. So now I'm going to be putting in my 5-inch. I was too lazy to get my ladder out of my truck, so I just ended up standing on my toolbox. But yeah, so now I have my 5-inch. So I have been using rubber bands lately. I do not have any more. I actually did not realize that I never ordered the correct size that I was supposed to, so I'm going to order that today. But you can find them on my Amazon storefront as well if you want to know what I'm talking about. So for today, I ended up using the 260. So this is how I've done 5-inch for the past couple years. I attach one 5-inch to one side and one 5-inch to the other side. But to be honest with you, I like doing the rubber band method better for these kind of installs, just because you can't really prep the 5-inch because it's color blocked, right? With each color, like, so there's another color after each one, like it's a new color. So what ends up happening is if you prep the 5-inch on the 260, you have to cut them so you can match the right 5-inch color with the cluster color, if that makes sense. So I didn't want to do that. So you have to just bring all your 5-inch and, you know, tie one 5-inch to the 260 one side and then do the same thing to the other side. When you have the rubber bands, you can just put the rubber bands on from before and just pop them out and slide them over. So you'll see that I did it for certain ones, like this particular cluster, but I didn't have enough to do them for all of them. But I like the way the 5-inch positions perfectly onto the balloon, and I feel like it helps cover gaps better than when you're doing 260s, because the 260s can sometimes move them. Now, in a case where you're doing your 5-inch on with only like maybe 2 colors, then that's a different story. Or if you have less colors, but this is a total of 5 different colors, so that would just be a lot to try to mentally know like how to prep each one. So it would have just been easier to just prep them on rubber bands and slide them over. But to be honest with you, from a beginner standpoint, if you're doing this, I would say to do the rubber band method for sure. And I'm always referencing like what's easier to prep or easier to do from beforehand. That's because I will live and die on that hill of prepping your stuff. So even though I came here with all of my, bigger clusters needing to be blown up, all my 5-inch was done. That is something I do not play with. 5-inch is so fast and easy, and it's really easy to transport no matter what type of vehicle that you're in going to these installs. It is a non-negotiable to prep these things, because sometimes you have a kind of a rough time with the install in general, and the last thing you want to do is sit there and try to figure out how to meticulously put together these little 5-inch balloons. So this is something that I always prep. And I always have people ask me, do I always buy 5-inch to match the color of the balloons? And the answer is yes. I will not do installs without having the 5-inch. Now, in some scenarios, sometimes I don't have any 5-inch left for a specific color. That's not horrible, especially if there's florals or anything else being incorporated into the design. But when it comes to actually the whole thing, I see people do it all the time. I see them do it with oversized installs and things like that. That's not something I negotiate on. Now, if it's an install where it's like for the ceiling, that I do not care about 5-inch being in there, to be honest with you. I focus on just having 11-inch, a 16, 17, 18, 19-inch balloon, and sometimes even 24-inch balloons. But when it comes to the ceiling installs, 5-inch, that's where I'll be like, okay, it's not that serious. But in any other time or concept or install, the 5-inch is necessary, okay? And I feel like it can look very tacky and look unfinished without it. And if you do nothing else, put 5-inch. If you do not have 5-inch, make sure there's some sort of accent, like I said, like a floral that you're putting in that can compensate for all the little tiny holes. So remember when I was telling y'all about the H method underneath here? Yeah, that was a mess. You'll see it ends up. There's nothing for me to explain at this point because I didn't even do the damn thing right. I just wanted to leave it in here because I just wanted to show y'all that no matter how many times, how long you do this for, you're going to do something wrong or incorrect. And it's not that deep. It's not the end of the world. But I left it there because I was like, I'm not going to sit there and pop these balloons because nobody could really even see it. And everybody was going crazy over it anyways.
I reached to 202nd Street and it takes time to go make a left and go south. I mean, go west, east. We go down, we're not going to pick it right in. And take home, over no far. I was like, just give me the name of the place, give me the name of the place, and then bring it here.
That's weird.
That's it.
Yes.
That's how they want to come here.
I know I have to set up. Alright, so back to the tutorial. I also wanted to say that next year I'm going to be changing my uniform. Obviously, I'm dressed like this because this was just for family. It wasn't nothing crazy. But I'm going to be changing like the uniform that I wear, especially now that I'm doing YouTube tutorials. I think that how I present myself is even more important. But leave a comment below if you want to know how I make some DIY uniforms that I used to use in the past. But now we're going to get on to this vinyl. Now, in my previous video, I think it was the big one, the notorious one. It got cut off when I was doing the vinyl. So let me show y'all how I do it. So do not think that I am a professional at this thing. I actually suck at these things, but this is just what works for me. So I rip off that entire sealant like back part, And the way I do it is like I did on the floor. I just pull it straight off. I just push it off, right? But when I put it on the board, I don't stick it down. I take this top part, which is sticky, obviously, because that's the paper that's like the sticky part of the paper. And I take a painter's tape. And what I do is I keep going back and forth, double checking, making sure that it's on right and correct, because once this vinyl is on, baby, it's up and it's stuck. It is not coming off under any circumstances. So now what I do is I scrape. I use the Cricut scraper. I will link it in my Amazon storefront. And I just keep scraping. And when I'm pulling with my palm completely on the backdrop and just pulling back. Now, it is good to go in and scrape as you're pulling back. If you can't do that, just do it really, really slow, because if you see it's not coming off properly, you can just flip it back and then scrape it some more. But you want to go super, super slow. And then I just take my hand, and if it's not completely pressed on to the board, I just take my finger and I run it along just to make sure that it's actually stuck to the backdrop, if that makes any sense. So once you rip that piece off, there's nothing else that you need to do with that piece of paper. So I just throw it in the garbage. But this was the overall finished look. It came out really cute. Personally, I did not want to put gold, but it didn't look horrible. It's just that I have an aversion to gold and silver being in certain color schemes. But tell me what you guys think in the comment section. Thank you guys for watching once again. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And comment if you have any ideas or questions or anything. I like when people give me suggestions to do for videos, so please do so. I'm going to be participating in a mini vlogmas, because it ain't going to be every day, but I'll try.
You can bank on it. You can put 100 grand on it. Anything I said, I'll stamp on it.